Bro, what is the UFC doing, man? Like, for real, I can't wrap my head around this matchmaking. Payton Talbott is fresh off a clear loss to Raoni Barcelos, and instead of giving him a bounce back fight to rebuild some momentum, they're throwing him in there with Felipe freaking Lima. And this is not how the UFC usually moves with their prospects. Talbott had hype. Let's not act like he didn't. The UFC was building him up. The media was backing him up. People were calling him the next big thing. The dude had clean striking, a long frame for the division, 2 finishes, 2 bonuses. The machine was behind him. But ever since that Barcelos fight, it feels like they've just jumped ship. Like, compare that to someone like Raoni Jr., right? When he lost to Christian Rodriguez, what did they do? They tossed him a layup. They gave him Terrence Mitchell. It made sense. Rebuilding the brand, getting the kid a highlight finish reel, reigniting the hype train. But Talbott, he loses one fight where, let's be honest, he got dominated in every area, and now they're just matching him up with arguably the most underrated guy at 135. To me, it's kind of wild, okay? Because Felipe Lima is not some mid-tier placeholder. This dude came out of Octagon MMA with a legit 14-1 record, and he hasn't lost a fight since 2015, and that's not a typo. He's been undefeated for nearly a decade. He trains at All Stars Training Center in Sweden, the same guy that helped build Khamzat Chimaev into a monster, so you know the pedigree is serious, and since coming to the UFC, he's already 2-0. And both of those wins told you something different about him. His debut was on just 6 days' notice against Mohamed Naimov, a dangerous guy who was red hot coming off some big finishes. Lima stepped in, stayed composed, and finished him with a rear naked choke in the 3rd round. And that's not something that you see every day. That's experience. That was calm and skill under pressure. Then he followed it up by beating Miles Johns, who was 15-2 at the time. And that's a legit gritty veteran with wrestling credentials and a history of dragging guys into deep water. And Lima just handled it smart. He just fought smart and he didn't get flustered and took home a clean decision. Stylistically, this guy is tricky. He's slick on the feet, mixes weird angles, and throws unpredictable shots. Flying knees, capybara kicks, awkward switch punches, and it's not just flash, he makes it work. He also knows when to mix in the grappling. He has solid takedown entries, and once he gets your back, he's got real finishing instincts. He's a guy who doesn't fold under pressure, and that's what makes him so dangerous, especially against someone like Payton Talbott, who's coming off a fight where the pressure was exactly what broke him down. Because Lima isn't a test, he's a problem, and it's wild that he's being treated like just another matchup. The dude might already be top 15 level, he's just flying under the radar because he hasn't had that mic time or the highlight clips yet. But if he beats Talbott, he's not flying under the radar anymore. So what are we doing here? This isn't a rebuilding fight. This is, we're gonna find out what you're made of type of fight, which is cool from a pursuit standpoint. I mean, I love the matchup. I'm down for 2 young killers throwing down. But if you're the UFC and you're trying to build stars, this ain't how you do it. And then you gotta ask, what is going on in Talbott's camp? Why are they taking this fight? He's 26, still green, just took his first L, and now he's getting an arguably tougher fight than the last one that he had. This is the toughest fight in his career. And listen, man, I don't know if it's confidence, pressure, or just bad timing, but this could backfire hard. I mean, I'm not counting out Talbott, okay? I'm not counting Talbott out. I still think he's talented, he's slick, composed, he has great distance management, and knows how to find clean shots. And if he wins this, it's massive. It's a massive statement. It will shut a lot of people up, but man, this is not a usual prospect build. This feels more like the UFC saying, all right, sink or swim. And if that's the case, we're about to learn everything about Payton Talbott, okay? And when we talk about sink or swim, let's actually talk about what we just saw with Payton Talbott. Because, yeah, he's slick when he's flowing, okay? Yeah, he's got clean hands, but let's not sugarcoat it. He looked bad against Barcelos, like real bad. That wasn't just a loss, that was a one-sided reminder that this game isn't all highlight reels and TikTok video edits, okay? Let me tell you that. Barcelos made him look green. He took him down over and over again and held him down there. And it completely sucked the life out of Talbott's offense, okay? There was no adjustments. There was no urgency. There was no second gear. It was like once plan A failed, there was nothing else in the toolbox. And remember, Barcelos is 37 years old. Outside the top 15, okay? And straight up a gatekeeper at this point. That fight was supposed to be Payton's launch pad, okay? Instead of that happening, it exposed every concern that has been quietly slimmering beneath the hype. His grappling, his urgency, and maybe even his mindset, okay? You got this guy being pushed like the next Sean O'Malley, but when it came to the grind, he looked like someone who wasn't ready for that level of grit, okay? Now, fast forward, and instead of getting a softer bounce back, the UFC matched him up with Felipe Lima, who's faster, younger, more explosive, and way more dangerous than Barcelo in terms of unpredictability, okay? Lima is the kind of guy who thrives in chaos, and what we saw in Talbott's last fight, he doesn't. The moment things went off script, he folds. And Lima, he doesn't fight on a script. He's gonna throw weird shit, he's gonna attack the legs, mix in flying knees, scramble for the back, and make Talbott uncomfortable early and often. And worst of all, he doesn't break. Lima stays in your face, so call it what it is. Talbott didn't just lose last time, he got humbled. And now he's stepping in there against a guy who's undefeated since 2015 at least. He's 2-0 in the UFC and already proved that he can finish or outwork legit talent. And this is not just a bounce back test. This is the fire. This is the full on skill check. And after how bad Talbott looked last time, there's no reason to believe this is a favorable matchup. Now again, I'm not fully counting the kid out. I still think there's a potential there, but if you look flat and completely outmatched against a slow, aging Barcelo, how are you going to deal with a guy like Lima who never stops moving and doesn't care about your hype? This isn't a comeback fight. This is Payton Talbott's fighting to prove that he belongs in the UFC, because if he gets steamrolled again, the whole next big thing push is dead in the water. So let's be real and let's break this down. What happens when these two guys step in the cage? Because the fight isn't about hype anymore. It's about who's better when the cage door shuts. And based on what we actually seen inside the Octagon, this matchup is actually more complicated than a striker versus grappler label would suggest. Like, let's start with Felipe Lima. The dude is just so well-rounded. His fight against Muhammad Naimov was perfect introduction. Not just because he won, but how he did it. He got that call on 6 days notice and didn't blink. No nerves, no jitter. He just walked into enemy territory and handled business. Naimov was coming in hot. Highlight real finishes, you know? Big, powerful, real chaos energy. And yet, Lima just stayed patient. He flowed, he made his reads, and once he saw the openings, boom, back take, rear naked choke, third round finish. And I'll tell you something, that wasn't luck. That was someone who knows what they're doing. Then came the Miles John fight, and that was a different beast entirely. John is the definition of a grinder. Solid wrestling base, low center of gravity, built like a damn fire hydrant, okay? And we've seen John drag prospects into a slow, dirty fight where he just edges you out. But Lima flipped the script. He didn't fall into the grind. He moved, countered, defended takedowns, and mixed up his own attacks. The fight never really became John's fight because Lima wouldn't let it. That shows IQ, that shows composure, and that shows maturity. And now he gets Talbott, a striker. Yeah, but he's not the one thriving in those scrambles or chaos, you know? And when we talk about Payton on the feet, he's one of the most polished young strikers in the division. And say what you want about the Barcelo fight, but when Talbott is flowing, he looks clean. There's range, there's timing, there's confidence, the way he flicks out his jab, sets traps under his shoulder rolls, it's all there. That stuff doesn't go away overnight. His technique is slick, and his ability to control the distance with feints and rhythm is high level. But the problem is, all that flash only works when he's comfortable. Look at the Barcelo fight again. First round, Talbott starts well. He's loose, moving, throwing combination, then Barcelo pressures, shoots, gets him down, and everything shuts off. No urgency to scramble, no active guard, no hip movement, just flat on his back, trying to survive. And to me, that's the red flag, because against Lima, you have to be ready for the chaos. Lima will shoot, Lima will jump for your back if you turtle, Lima will throw wild kicks just to close the gap and grab your leg. And that's where this matchup gets rough for Talbott, because stylistically, Lima is tailor-made to frustrate a smooth striker. Lima switches stances, he throws unorthodox shit, not to score points, but to get a reaction. He creates scrambles and thrives in transitions. He doesn't need a perfect setup, he just needs you to freeze. And Payton, he froze last time, man, I'm just being honest. If he's working on his grappling, if he comes in with urgency that I've got something to prove, fire, sure. Maybe he turns the corner. Maybe he keeps it standing, chops up Lima with the long rangey tools, and wins a clean kickboxing match. It's not impossible, but that's a lot of ifs. You don't walk into the cage with a guy who hasn't lost in nearly a decade, who trained with killers, and who just beat two completely different styles, unless you're ready for hell. And as much as I like Talbott, I just haven't seen him thrive when he's uncomfortable. Lima's pace, Lima's unpredictability, Lima's composure in the clinch, in transitions, on the bag, that's where I think the fight is going to get decided. Because listen, man, I'm just being real. Because if Talbott can't stop the takedown or get back to his feet quickly, that cage is going to start to feel smaller and smaller with each passing minute. Probably an early prediction is probably going to be Felipe Lima, probably by decision. Maybe by submission if Talbott panics and gives up his back again. But either way, I think Lima drags him into deep waters and keeps his streak alive.